Any questions?
Questions?
You said heat is great for promoting healing, hot tub particularly is what you,
Heat enhances the metabolic rate
okay.
of the body.
Will a sauna do the same thing?
Similar but not as good. When you
Well, I owned a hot tub, but I sold it.
you might have one.
Well, it was an 8-man and I was the only one in it.
So a smaller version.
So I have to get a small
Should've made
one.
Do you have a sauna?
No.
I have a sauna for sale.
Hey, you should have said sauna's just as good.
It's not. It's,
That's for sale.
but it's very good. It's in the end room. It is for sale.
Are you moving up or out?
Pardon?
Are you moving up or out, the sauna?
I have 2 daughters that want to do massage and stuff back there, and it's in the
They
way.
need the room.
And so,
Well, just put them in yet,
It's
and
in the
then
way.
do the massage.
so the sauna,
That ought to loosen them up good before
Yeah.
you massage them.
It would, but if it was outside the room, it would be,
So just move it
Doable.
outside in the backyard, you know.
Is it right? I know that'd be good exercise.
so if you know anybody, the sauna sells new for about $5,500. It's a very, very good one. I'm selling it for $4,000. That's a good deal if you want one. It's called a Fit Bomb. You can go online and look at them. They've been around for a long time. Okay, let's go to work. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic where we correlate 2 corners of the triangle. We're going to correlate the mental, emotional, spiritual. Keep in mind the top of the triangle includes those 3. Mental means the brain. Spiritual is the true you. Emotional are the feelings you have. What you think affects what you feel and what you believe. The spirit is the most important part. The mental, emotional, spiritual corner of the triangle, that part of you is non-tangible, but it has a direct effect on the structure. That's the other corner. It also has a direct effect on the chemistry. So what you think, feel, and believe affects how your stomach works, how your lungs work, how your bowels work. They affect everything. The word is synchronicity, which means anything can cause anything, and everything affects everything. So in geometry, you cannot change the shape of a triangle without changing all 3 corners. They must change. Again, today we're going to talk about the mental, emotional, spiritual patterns. Remember that word, patterns. We're going to come back to that. They have a direct, immediate effect on the structure. That means how you sit, how you stand, how you walk, how you lay down, the alignment of your spine, the position of your pelvis is all affected by the way you think. And what I'm going to teach you, I hope, will help you to help yourself become more neutral. Remember that word, neutral. Neutral means centered from both directions. Both when we look at you from the side or look at you from the back. Neutral is centered. By divine design, the human body is configured so that it has cushions. That's why we have spinal curves. The spinal curves in the neck and the mid back and the low back are like shock absorbers, to cushion you to protect your brain and to protect your organs. The body is a perfect design to have the very best balance between two concepts: stability, and flexibility. If the spine, if the body or the mind, either one, is too stable, then it's more sensitive to breakdown. You know people who have a rigid personality. Some of you are married to that person. They have a rigid personality. Nobody smiled. Some are married to one that has too much motion, too flexible, wishy-washy. That's what my mom used to say, that they're kind of wishy-washy. My dad used to say, our neighbor Walt has his head on straight. Now, he didn't know then what I know now, but I know what he meant then when he said what he did. Our neighbor had his head on straight. He was not too far one way, not too far the other way, not too far forward or back. He was centered. My grandmother Cooper, my mother's mother, at 92, I took her x-ray in my clinic. She looked like this. She was centered. Cora Hale was centered. Cora Hale had one complaint about God, to God, with God. And it was, why doesn't he let me die? Fred, my grandpa Cooper, had been gone for a long time. And she didn't like being alone. But she was strong and healthy. When we had our 92nd birthday, she had made little handicrafts for the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids. She had a big bowl, I think 141 gifts. And she knew every one of them. That's pretty good for an old lady. But she was balanced, and the reason she was healthy is because she was balanced. Okay, so I'm going to pass this handout around. Ideally, to do this class correctly, we would take about 3 days.
That chair's just a little too soft for me.
Pardon?
That chair's just a little too
I'll
soft
switch
for me.
with you.
Oh, are you sure?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Nobody wants to sit by me, that's their person to sit. I had a shower.
Now, this diagram is a perfect description of the summary of what we're going to talk about today. My intent is to help you, again, understand the basics of it, so that, number one, you can help yourself be more neutral. When you're most neutral, you're most healthy. When you're most neutral, you have the greatest potential. You're not stuck in an imbalanced position. Now, when I say imbalanced, I mean not too far right and not too far left. Not too far forward and not too far back. You're right in the middle. So we're going to start at the top. If you have any questions, ask as we go down through this. It says a conscious means where you think about on a minute-to-minute basis. The conscious mind is like a ping pong ball that bounces. Can only be on one side of the net or the other. Some of you think you can multitask, but that just means you hit the ball more, because the ball can only be in one spot. The subconscious mind is a recorder of everything from conception. So if you know a young person is going to be a mother, do what you can to help her know that the moment she conceives, she has an effect on the baby's subconscious mind. When the baby is born, by divine design, as I've told you before, the baby comes into the world like a new computer that has multiple programs that have the capacity to do many different things. The baby is made up of an intelligence, a spirit, and a subconscious mind, and a body. As the baby grows, the baby learns. Most of the learning occurs first in the conscious mind, and then with repetition, like with people our age, with repetition over and over, it goes into the subconscious mind. It becomes part of the pattern of the person's personality. Today we're talking mostly about patterns. So, could I borrow your pen? Think of the patterns simply. If you go too far forward and become aggressive, you're anterior or aggressive. That's what it says on the form. If you go too far back, you're passive, you're withdrawn. Where is balance? Balance is in the middle. If you're a bird, I can now note the body. If you become more emotional, like at the bottom picture, it says centered is optimal. That means you're here in the middle. You're not to the right or to the left. Thank you. When you go right, you become more emotional and more sensitive.
Now, don't you think we do this throughout the day? We flip back and forth, front and back, sideways. It's how we want to stay as neutral, but we always we'll have emotions or an upset or something happy. Does that change anything?
Yes, and that's a perfect question. That's a perfect comment for the discussion today. We move around. Here's the key. If your relaxed, neutral pattern is centered, then you can be, when you need to be, more emotional. And then you come back to center. When you need to be logical, you can be logical. When you need to be aggressive, you can be. You're not stuck in a pattern. Now, some people get stuck in a pattern, so that let's suppose this is a test now. When they're forward and left, what's the main pattern? Logical and aggressive.
Yes.
Don't pick a boy that's up there.
Okay.
Because if it's there now, and that's his subconscious pattern, you're stuck. Unless you can get into chains. And how does that work? I'll tell you how it works. President David O. McKay said, each person is the architect of their own fate. I'll pass this around, you can read it. Each person is the architect of their own fate. So, women, leave the men alone. You can't change them. If they do change, all growth comes from within, not from without. It's an inside job. He then goes on to say that one of our main aims in life is to have a consciousness, a victory over self. So your brain becomes the master. You pass that around if you'd like to copy, you can, but that's a quote from President McKay. So the idea is to try to get neutral so that you can do, when you need to, you can go out and come back. Did that make sense? Now, if you're stuck in a pattern and to your left, and you need to be emotional and hold back, it's hard to do it because your pattern is something else. Okay, back to the handout. The subconscious pattern primarily is manifest when you sit and when you sleep. That's why I've talked to you over and over again about sleeping in a neutral posture, not curled up on a ball. That affects the whole body. It affects the mind. Now, I'm going to pause for a minute. Some of you are probably thinking, okay, how can posture affect how the brain works? Well, if you have pressure on one side of the brain functions different. Just like when you have pressure on one side of your chest, your lungs function different. You have pressure on the left side, you have spinal rotation, you have ribs that are misaligned, you have pelvis that's misaligned, and then you have a heart that does not work the same as when it's neutral. The brain is the same way. So as we go down through the different areas of the body, keep in mind the nerves that affect the organs that come out of the spine are directly affected by posture, which is directly affected by personality. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Or doesn't matter. We get them both.
As you're talking about the body can't function properly and your personality does change when you have, different postures, it's making me think of one of the practices that's very commonly used in business. They talk about power positions. Before you go into a meeting or a negotiation, use power positions. One of them is, they call it the Wonder Woman position. Stand up straight, put your chest out, put your hands on your hips. I think everyone's fairly familiar with that. And you literally have more power going into what you need to than if you were still in your slumped at the computer, poor posture. So it's pretty commonly accepted in business.
It is, and the posture you just demonstrated was a neutral, centered, balanced posture. So if you go into the meeting and there's a lot of crap, you just stay neutral. You're not cowering, act like you got beat up. You're there. You can respond appropriately. Now, I'm going to cover a couple of points at one time. Most of you are doing the occipital release. The purpose in that is to create motion inside the head so that the head can move more normally when you walk and when you breathe, so the brain works at its best capacity. That bone, the occiput, you find the words on that page. The occiput, it says 0 to 7. What that means is, if I were to take an X-ray of you from the side and look at the base of the head should be level. That's what my dad said about my neighbor. He's level-headed. His head was level. My mom had a friend who had her nose in the air. Not level-headed. ready for a fight, and all the time. The atlas vertebra, that's C1, holds the head, correlates with your heart, your emotions. These should be in harmony with each other. What you think and what you feel. Normal is 0 to 7. If the head goes too high, it drives the body back. So you become more resistant. If there's an imbalance between the head and heart, like you overthink and underfeel, we have conflict. And I tell you, a lot of people have headaches back here because there's mental, emotional conflict within. The cause of the headache is because of incongruency of those two areas. Now going down further into this part of the spine, go down further on that same picture, T1, that means thoracic vertebra number 1. By divine design, when you take an x-ray from the side on the person, that should be about 25 degrees, so it sits at an angle. And the spine then has a normal curve down to T12. T12 is also about 25, so we have a perfect arc that provides a cushion for you. If you're healthy, the curve is smooth. If you are self-abusive, look at the words thoracic apex, go to the right. It says if it's too flat, you have self-abuse. Now what that means is this part of the back should have a nice smooth curve, but if a person has a pattern of abusing himself, it flattens out.
When you say abusing yourself, does that mean taking more than you should? Say abuse verbally, or the way people treat you, you're just kind of a doormat or a mouse? Or is that something else?
Well, it's that also. It's not only that, but we could, if we had time in a big classroom, I'd draw another triangle and say, okay, let's list how you can abuse or be abused mentally. We'll make a list. How can you abuse or be abused spiritually? How can you abuse or be abusing emotionally, right? Then we could go to the other corner of the triangle, chemically. What are the ways that we can abuse ourselves chemically with our intake? Again, we can make a whole list. How can we abuse ourselves with the function of our gut? We can make another list. How about cleaning out the body? Another list. How about we'll go to the other corner of the triangle. How can you abuse your body structurally? You can have a bad pillow. You can have bad shoes. You can have a car that the seat doesn't fit you. Your husband liked the color of the car and he liked the engine, but the seat sucks because it doesn't fit you. And so every time you get in it, you have self-abuse. So that it can go on and on and on. But so what's the issue? The truth is we all abuse other people. We all get abused. We all abuse ourselves, some, now and then. The idea is to try to identify and eliminate whatever it is, so that you can become in harmony with who you are. Now, if it's too far back, now according to the words, you have avoid being true self. You hold back. You don't do what you don't do what you have the capacity to do. You don't do what you want to do. You're a victim. You're under somebody else's control. You're holding back. So the spine goes like that. This can happen at any age. It can happen to a young person because the way they carry the pack. I watch them walk down there. They carry the pack, they're bent down, they're forward. It messes up their whole personality. It changes the way their brain works. They're victims of not being who they are. Does that make sense?
I've said this before, but it's a different class now, but I studied graphology, which is handwriting
Yeah.
analysis, and it's the same thing with handwriting. If the handwriting leans forward, emotional, backwards, reserved, it's amazing what you're talking about here with your spine. But as a teacher, that was very helpful to me when I get notes from parents, because I knew exactly how they were feeling.
Yeah. So what you were saying is the way they wrote is a manifestation of what's going on in here and here.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
So again, the idea is to become neutral and become who you are. And right now, there's a lot of activity to try to help people regain their identity. Okay, let's go on down further. I want to go back up. I told you I would correlate the occiput with T1. You can connect T1 and occiput. They both correlate with the brain, with brain function. T12 correlates with emotion, feelings. If T12 is too high, people hide feelings. A lot of people hide feelings because they get in trouble when they share their feelings.
Is that why your back would hurt then?
Your back hurts a lot from holding
Feelings.
hidden feelings. Sometimes when I see that on a person, in fact, yesterday in class, we had a couple that had that pattern. And this is a recommendation, and some of you probably have it too. If you feel like you cannot express your feelings, take a sheet of paper, divide it in a right side and a left side, positive and negative. Make a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of positive feelings that you would like to share, that you have not shared, for any reason. The reason's not relevant. It's the fact that you haven't shared them. They're still inside of you. And they're good. A lot of people, wanted to tell the mom or the dad or the brother or the husband and wife how much they loved for them, how much they cared for them. And they didn't. They just held it in. And then they're gone. And then so how do you deal with that? The other side of the divided page is negative feelings. I'm going to quote my mother, forgive me. Mother, forgive me.
Yeah.
She would say, I'll forgive the son of a bitch, but I will get even with him.
Yeah. She must be what you're saying.
I think I heard that a few times. That was her pattern, so she got her feelings out. Now let's go down further to the lumbar curve and the sacral angle. You can draw a circle on those lumbar curve and sacral angle because they work very close together. This is a portion of the body that has the lumbar curve. 5 vertebrae, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sacrum, that sacrum is a group of bones that fits between the hips. It's the foundation for the whole spinal column. If we take a picture of the body from the side, and we draw a line across the top of the sacrum, it should be about 50 degrees. That's what it says right there, 45 to 50 degrees. That's normal, neutral, healthy posture, which then gives a nice start for a nice lumbar curve. If a person has negative emotions and they hold them in, that flattens out and flattens that angle down. So when you have a flat low back, it's many times associated with anger unexpressed. A lot of people have anger unexpressed. Why? Because they're such good people. They get really angry and they don't want to slug somebody in the mouth. So they take it in, hold it in. When they hold in the crowd, they get constipated physically. A lot of constipation is due to holding in mental, emotional crap. And when you get so much of that, then the sacral angle also, which should be 45, flattens down. The flatter it gets from the side, the less life means. If it goes below 0, so now it's negative, it's reversed, you can have what's called a death wish. The number one cause of death in Idaho on age 15 to 22 is suicide. The number one cause of death in men over 72 in Idaho is suicide. Why? Because they get fed up with all the crap. They can't deal with it, so they end it. Now, what we're talking about today are patterns. All patterns can be improved. All patterns can be changed. They change better when you become aware of them and how they affect your body, and you intentionally make steps toward becoming better and better every day in every way. And as soon as you convince your subconscious mind that that's your plan, your body will then be attracted to and cause you to do more things that help you become truly better and better every way, every day a little bit. Does that make sense? I'm going to tell you 2 stories about real patients I had in Colorado Springs. One was a fellow in his early 50s, had low back pain. He went to the medical doctor, he said, "Do you have a low back disc?" He came to me, I did the exam, looked at his pattern, and said, "Your pattern shows that you have no male support." His left hip was down quite a bit. So when I look at the X-ray, one of the first things I'll look at is the pelvis level, or does the pelvis tip? The greater the pelvis tips, the sicker they are. He was sick mentally and emotionally, and I recommended to him, rather than get a lot of care, go join a club where you can make friends with and associate with some other men. You need male support. He had no family. About a year later, he was still fussing with this low back problem. I said to him again, it's a mental emotional issue. You must go join a church or go golfing, bowling, that doesn't matter. You need to get some male support. If you don't, you're going to keep on going downhill and finally you're going to give up. A few minutes later, he went over to the Garden of the Gods one bright Sunday morning, laid down, shot himself in the head. He was done, okay? Another lady who, upon examination, I looked at her and said to her, I don't know why I said it, probably shouldn't have, but I said, you have a lot of anger, it's toward your husband, I can tell that by your pattern, you probably want to shoot him. She said, I did. I shot him right there. I severed his spinal cord. I didn't kill him, and now I'm stuck with taking care of him. I said, shoot him again. can't say that. She wanted to do it, but she knew if she did, she'd go somewhere she didn't want to go. Okay,
You should have been there for the first one.
now the sacral angle is associated with creativity. The word creativity is on your page. That correlates with sexuality. The higher it is, like the steeper that angle is, the more sexual one becomes, the more interested they are in sex. The lower it goes, the less they are. I've done this class for couples. Lots of time we have one spouse is high and one spouse is low, and they have problems. And we talk about how to get them more the same, so that they're in the same range with each other, so that that's not a part of the conflict. Whenever I hired an employee, I always take pictures of their spine as part of the entry exam. Is that cheating? I was looking at X-ray and saying, not you. You have too many problems. I had a few people who would come and say, I'm thinking about marrying Bobby. Would you take a picture of Bobby? I want to know what I'm getting.
I did that.
Did it work?
Well, it was informative and it helped us be on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they
So it worked.
understand
Yeah.
who you're getting. I've told a few people, don't do it. You're too different. It won't work out. Oh, we're in love. We've been dating for 5 years and we're gonna go ahead and get married. 3 years later, they're divorced. Why? It didn't work. Okay? Couples with problems, if they work on the profile, they become more healthy. Now, the idea is you get neutral, balance, aligned, and find somebody else that's neutral, balanced, and aligned. You got it made. They won't take away the problems, they just help you for a long time. Okay, now let's go to the,
Can you show me again on that? Where are you measuring that line? How do you see that? How do you know that?
okay, look on this picture.
Yeah?
We're looking at two spots. Spot number one, we draw a line on the top of the hip, the femur head. When they're standing up,
Oh,
on the
right
femur
here.
head. When they're sitting down, on the ilium. Conscious and subconscious. You see that on this page?
Yeah. Then how do you see if it's tipped, like in this picture
On the
above?
side view,
But,
on the side view. This view.
okay, show me on that thing. What are you seeing? I don't see I just don't understand it
Okay,
quite.
on the side view, when you take an x-ray,
So where's that part that's
okay.
tipped? I mean, what do you see?
If I took the ilium off, you could see the top of the sacrum.
Oh,
You can't see it,
I guess that's my
but
problem.
on,
I can't see it.
but on an x-ray, you can see through the ilium.
Oh,
You
okay.
can see through that bone to the top of the sacrum. It's that bone right there. The top of the sacrum. Okay?
So if you're looking at that guy, what angle's he at?
Well, I can change it. I can make him normal, or I can flatten him. This is bad. This is bad,
No, I mean,
because now the sacrum is flat. This is a death wish. Negative.
okay.
This is
So that
hypersectional.
bone goes like this, is that what you're saying? That
No.
sacrum bone, so it's kind of L-shaped and so that's what you're
It
tipping?
has a flat line. After class, I'll show you.
Okay.
We'll take this
I'm sorry.
apart. But it's very easy to see an x-ray. And that's, so if I were to examine one of your teenage grandkids, I would look at the sacral angle to see how they feel about sex. If they're hypersexual, I would say to the mom and dad, you better watch that kid. okay? If they have, especially if they have a flat mid-back and they're self-abusive. And I've talked to teenagers about that. They say, you have a problem, you need to deal with it. It's not just your back. You don't have just back pain. You have emotional pain. You have mental conflict. Let's fix it. Sometimes it takes a while. Okay, so one more thing. We're making great time. One more thing about the pelvic drop. Did it pass a picture around that? Show the legs. Okay, when we draw the line on the bottom picture across the femur head or the ischium, the ilium, we look for level. Top of the femur when they stand, top of the ilium when they sit. We want the tops of the legs to be level foundation. For a female with a minor problem, the head can go right up to 12 millimeters. The femur can drop up to 5. If they're normal, the pubis then shifts to the other side. Now we have a healthy, properly adapted female. If they become too emotional, too sensitive, too much caring, they go further right. If they have conflict with female family members, the right hip will go lower. If they have conflict with female church members, will go lower. If they have conflict with female women in society, the neighbor down the street will go lower. If they have a problem with government females, like the vice president, will go lower.
So we should all have a very low hip.
Yeah, we're gonna be really.
Where is she? You can't
Kevin,
find
she's
her.
not around.
Now, if it goes even lower, then you have a problem with God. An emotional, spiritual problem. You confuse emotionally with the emotional part of God and who He is and who you are and what's the relationship. Now, if you're a man, the same principle is true on the other side. So when a man, let me say one more thing. If I examine a male and he had a right short leg of 5 millimeters, I know he has a problem with his wife. If it's 10, family, daughter, mother, etc., etc. It's on the female side. The male should go low on the left side. So males go left, females go right. If they're healthy. And if they go too far left or too far right, then they become less healthy. Now, when I was, back when you were young children, and I graduated from chiropractic college in 1975, we asked the American Medical Association, could you send us a description of a normal, healthy spine? They wrote back and said, we don't know. We wrote to the orthopedic surgeons, could you describe a normal spinal column? We wrote back and said, we don't know.
Oh my word.
We don't know. Commonly, that's the word, commonly we find this kind of pattern. So the group I was studying with said, okay, we don't know what's normal, why don't we start measuring everything? That's when we started measuring things like I showed you today. We measured everything. We took pictures of the whole spine, from the front, the whole spine, from the eyes down to the tops of the legs. We turn them sideways and take another picture. Then we sit them down, take another picture, both directions. We had 4 pictures for the spinal column. We then started to measure and mark and correlate. Here's what we found. We found that, first of all, that the standing pattern correlated with the conscious pattern and the sitting correlated with the subconscious pattern. Why did we know that? Because part of our research included psychologists. This is when computers were young, where data was really easy to start to correlate. And what we found out was we had some patients who would not get well with chiropractic or physical therapy or Wolfing or massage. They just did not improve. They were stuck in an unhealthy pattern. So we sent them to a couple of groups of psychologists. They would then do a psychological assessment. And they would say, these people have this pattern. So we then correlated body alignment with psychological patterns. Okay? We then said, these people haven't responded. Why do you treat them? So the psychologist treated them for a while only with what they do. Send them back for new x-rays, they improved. So then we got really excited. And for a number of years, we correlated all that stuff together. And that's how we came up with this concept that I shared with you today, of how they affect each other. And I could tell you other stories about people. I'll tell you one. I had a fellow come in as a referral. We did the picture. I went into him, my staff marked the x-rays. I went in and said, okay, let's talk about your problems. I said, you have this, this, and this, and this as your main problems. This is what you need to do. He said, I'll do it. He left. He didn't come back. We sent him a letter, moved. We called, we could get hold of him. A little bit over a year later, he walked in the office with no appointment. He said, I'm here for a re-exam. I said, who are you? He told me, he said, oh yeah, go get your pictures taken. I'll come talk to you in a few minutes. I was busy. So they took his pictures, marked them up, and I came in and looked at the pictures and said, wow, you're almost normal. What did you do? He's looked at me like, what do you mean? What did you do? I did what you told me to do. For 1 year. He straightened him out. No care at all other than what we talked about today. His main problem was up here at the top, and he fixed it himself. Okay, so now the test. Now, I know you've heard some things today that sound far out. Do any of you have any questions?
Oops, wait a minute. I got the message.
Hey, I was wondering, like, how do you know if your shoulder's sagging or the other one's going like this?
Stand in front of a mirror, move around, close your eyes, open your eyes, and feel. You'll know. The one with most sore will be the one that's stretched the most. Not tightest, stretched. Okay, so
Do you take x-rays here? Do you take x-rays here?
I do not take x-rays. As you know, I don't practice chiropractic right now, but I have a good friend in town. His name is Dr. Calloway. Dr. Calloway will take x-rays of you if you go to his office and tell him you would like x-rays of you. Okay.
Does he understand what you do about this?
No, nothing.
So you just bring the x-rays back to you?
Yeah, he'll take your pictures and send them to me. I can look at them.
I did that, it was very helpful.
It's very helpful. Now, here's the catch. For me to do it the way I've always done it, I need a single view of the whole spine 4 times. 2 from the front, 1 sitting, 1 standing, 2 from the side, 1 sitting, 1 standing. And they don't take them now. They take only the neck, the mid-back, the low back. So in order to get what I would do to do a whole exam would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that'd take 12 pictures. They probably won't do that. But if you wanted a more accurate evaluation, have them, if you will, have them take them of you sitting down in a neutral posture. So you sit, don't pose, just sit normal. We have them sit on a hard wooden stool, put their arms forward so we could get a good picture. If you want to take them sitting, then take them standing. And he will do that, and it's not expensive. Okay, the first part of this, we'll go through very quickly. The body is an outward physical manifestation of the inner conscious and subconscious pattern. That's true statement. The pelvis, the base of the foundation, males go left, females go right. Same with the head. Males go left, females go right. Only a small amount. The head ideally should be balanced in the middle. We talked about that. The thoracic spine, that's where the ribs are, should have that nice smooth, the angle with a nice smooth curve. The top and the bottom should be the same, 25 degrees. And the spinal length should be, we used to measure the spinal length. Should be 1/10 how far back the curve is on the thoracic spine. Standing reflects of the lumbar curve should be smooth, have a 50-degree angle. We talked about how the foundation should be about 50 degrees. If you're going to build a house, you start at level. If you're going to build a spine, you start at 50 degrees so you get a good curve. We want the curves, all the curves.
Can I say something about the spinal length? Because you didn't talk about that very much while you were in the process. But one thing I noticed, because there's the there is elongation, functional hyperelongation, functional compression. And I am always super aware of that when I get in my car. Because after a good night's sleep, I have to adjust the rear view mirror. I'm a different height. Drive to work, whatever, put in a long, hard day, come out, have to tip it back down because I got pressed. I used my extra reserves throughout the day. Some days I didn't have to move it, but some days I do. And if I had to move it, I think I need to get some extra rest tonight so my body can heal, regenerate, recuperate, and get back to its normal spinal length.
Perfect. Thank you for doing that. And sometimes when you sleep in a bad posture, that changes the length. Okay. All patterns can be modified with repetitive microtherapy. Let's go to the questions. True, false. Like a two-edged sword, posture affects personality and personality affects posture. True. Posture modifies tension on the brain and modifies its function, meaning behavior. True. Head forward posture causes one to behave more aggressive than tissue tolerance. True.
So a lot of computer work affect that,
That's one of the
like
biggest
8 hours a
problems.
day, yeah,
And it's not the computer,
this position.
it's the person that does not understand the mechanics of balance, the importance of balance, and what it really does to the body when you get imbalanced for a long time and hold an abnormal pattern. The body becomes in a state of defense if it has the energy to defend. If it then has the energy over defend, so it gets locked up. That's when you get tight back here, tight in the head, a lot of pain, and that will affect the low back because of the weight of the head forward. It's all related. Number 4, a flat lumbar curve is indicative of internalized anger. True. 5, flattening of the thoracic curve, that's where the ribs are, is a sign of self-abuse. True. So it's real easy at church to shake somebody's hand and put your hand on the back and check them out.
Long shake.
My wife and daughters understand this perfectly. And they will oftentimes say, did you see that? 6, 1 leans or lifts to the right when trying to be emotional. True. Watch people when they speak at the podium. Which way they're leaning.
Now we're all gonna.
Idolatrous hump, number 8. 7 is the opposite logic. That's true. Idolatrous hump, that's the upper part of the thoracic spine. When they get stiff like this up here, right in here, that's a sign of dislike, being too excessive critical about self. And females are very good at that, more so than males. Males could be, they don't care, you know.
They're oblivious.
They just,
Yeah, they just want.
they just go on. Women try to be the perfect. Number 9, increasing the angle of the sacrum has a tendency to increase creativity, sexuality, or ability to express. That's important. That's why when you sit, it's important for you to sit upright, neutral, with a sacral angle up. I tell you, and I'll tell you next week when we have the discussion on the whole body vibration. I will tell you over and over again, keep the pubis down and the rear end up to maintain the sacral angle and the lumbar curve. Now, what does that have to do with anger? Will help you deal with anger more effectively. Will help you to be less constipated. Will help your prostate, your female organs, your kidneys work better when they're in a neutral, aligned position. Number 10, decreasing the sacral angle has a tendency to decrease creativity, even to the point of a death wish. That's why if I were doing an X-ray on a potential employee, if she had a low sacral angle, I would know that she's not capable of figuring out problems. She's not creative. But when somebody is creative, who can see a problem and come up with a different number of ways to solve the problem. 11, it's always best to be balanced, true. 12, the greatest position of power, like Deborah said, is relaxed, balanced, neutral spinal column. What would you call it?
The Wonder Woman power position.
The Wonder Woman power position.
Wonder Woman is with the hands on the hips.
Thank you. Now, again, part of my goal is to help each of you become more neutral. I want to give you encouragement to live the kind of life that when you finally get done with your work, you can die healthy. You don't have to get sick to die. You can die healthy when you're done. So if you want to live long, get healthy, and to quote my wife, buy more fabric.
Tools.
There we go.
Tools, buy more tools.